Hi, my dear Astro family. So today we are going to be looking at Mars retrograde, starting in the sign of Leo. And let me just give you the date straight away. So Mars went into the sign of Leo on the 4th of November, 2024. And in about a month time, around the 7th of December, Mars is going to go retrograde. And on the 7th of January 2025, Mars will be back into the sign of Cancer, and it will leave the sign of Cancer on the 18th of April 2025. And altogether, Mars is going to be in the sign of Leo until June 18th. So now, Mars goes retrograde approximately about every 2 years, and it lasts for about 78 days in general. And retrogression would be an indication of something that needs to be reviewed or revisited. And therefore, Mars retrograde is going to talk to us about having to slow down a little bit, having to rethink uh, our actions. Mars is the representation of action, the willpower, but how we initiate things in life as well. So you might be noticing, for example, that you have got a bit less energy, for example, or you want to be achieving something, but you are actually a little bit slowed down as well. Retrogression is very much about an inner type of initiation, really. Mars represents our motivation, the willpower, and it can actually make you a lot stronger as well. It can make you a lot more energetic about something. You can kind of feel like that you have got so much energy. But unfortunately, whatever you kind of do, you may feel that you are a little bit slowed down. So, for example, when Mars is in the sign of Leo, this could be a brilliant time for you to actually have a vision and start kind of like working on those behind the scene. Uh, Leo is the sign of creation, and Mars is extremely motivated to get ahead in life. So you can give birth to a creative project, for example, but maybe this retrogression is about kind of mapping out what you want to achieve. So there is an element of having to practice a bit of patience here, and that's going to be highly important. Because often what happens with Mars is that it tends to be making some impulsive decisions. This is the reason why we're going to have to step back a little bit and then not necessarily rushing forward. Mars has got a lot of desire, and it's usually a desire to be successful, to kind of get approved in a way, or to be cherished, especially in the sign of Leo. So it's kind of like I'm so motivated to put the crown on top of my head, or someone who is going to be looking up to me as kind of like a king, or I am the best at something. So I want to be, I don't know, the best runner, for example, in the world, and so forth. But in order for you to be the best at something, you need to be able to patient as well. You need to be patient with yourself as well as with others. Because often this Mars in the sign of Leo wants to get a lot of positive feedback from others, and you can get really motivated to kind of like get admired. So when Mars is in the sign of Leo, we are extremely determined. Usually we use a lot of kind of like our strength to be able to become that kind of like celebrity. Mars is about I want it. Mars is the planet of entitlement. So often with Mars, I'm entitled to be noticed, I'm entitled to be celebrated, and so forth. So this is a little bit of a dominancy type of um, constellation where we show, where we put up a show about how strong we are. And therefore, often we have got that inclination with Mars in Leo to kind of like overstep the barriers as well. And it's kind of like, scratching the surface of other people's how tolerant they are, pretty much. So we can boss people around, we can become a quite, yeah, bossy and in a way egocentric as well. Uh, I feel like with Mars in Leo, because it's retrograde, it's going to teach us about having to cooperate with others as well. And it's not just a self-centered type of approach to things. Um, for example, it could also indicate that you want to look like your role model. For example, because Leo represents kings and queens and celebrities and stars, basically. So I want to be like them. I am actually comparing myself with them. It's kind of like Mars in Leo. I'm so determined to find new stars. So, kind of like it could talk to us about a talent show, for example, that I want to be in a talent show. Also, Mars in Leo could be actually boosting something to do with how much sport you do. And with Mars, it's typically the leader, right? So I'm organizing certain type of sport activities, for example. Often it comes with a lot of optimism as well. Often Mars in Leo could give really good kind of like presentation skills or representation of other people as well. Like I like, for example, attending the Olympic Games and so forth. But also it can increase your desire to have a lot more fun as well. And typically, Leo is about luxury. So I want to do something like an elite club, luxurious experiments, for example, or experiences that we want. Or we want to end up, for example, at the casino, playing a little bit, trying our luck out, because there is that adventurous side to Mars in the sign of Leo as well. And not to mention how much it could increase our sexual energies also. Mars in Leo is about flirtation, one night stand, kind of like wanting to find a boyfriend and a girlfriend. It comes with a lot of bling as well. And you know what? I would say that while Mars is in the sign of Leo, actually, it's very possible that, especially with this retrogression, it's very possible that 9 months later, we're going to have a lot of babies, for example, born. So there is a lot of excitement around Mars here. We need to just remember that Mars is the planet of action. It's about competitiveness and your willpower. And often this could actually spin out of control a little bit. So that's why that Mars retrograde is going to be very important that you slow down and you look at whether you make the right decision or not. Yes, sometimes in Mars in Leo, we need to buckle up, because Mars wants to go ahead. And in a way, Leo is the representation of bravery. This is a hot sign, and the hot planet being in a hot sign. So we can become kind of big-headed with this. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a flu, so that's why I'm coughing and so forth. Just a second. Yeah, just I had to stop for a second to cough it out because it was just bugging my throat. So while Mars is in the sign of Leo, we might be acting spontaneously, but we might not be doing the enough reflection as well. Also, this could indicate that we are a lot more passionate. We want to be gaining composure somehow. And also, it represents your effectiveness as well, that you want to be doing things effectively. Also, because Mars is the representation of physical strength. So while Mars is retrograde here, it can actually indicate certain type of difficulties of containing your own energy. So whether you are unsure about how to kind of spare your energy, or you try to run the marathon without any type of training, and then you kind of burn out as well. And often with Mars retrograde in the sign of Leo, we can even go in the wrong directions. And then we have to be kind of like retracing our step, and then gonna have to go back to the start line and then start the whole journey again. So this is why we sometimes need to move a little bit slower. And often you will see that your strength is quite curtailed as well. Also, you can feel discouraged, for example, or certain type of fatigue that could be kind of like striking your body. So often it is said with Mars being retrograde that to initiate something new is not necessarily the greatest. Maybe we're gonna have to think a little bit deeper. We're gonna have to question things, and we're gonna have to be practicing something that we already started, kind of slowly, examining those obstacles that are occurring right in front of you. And often, Mars doesn't like obstacles, right? Mars doesn't like running into any type of kind of like problems and so forth, because it can feel like that something is holding me down. So we need to be examining these obstacles and then coming up with a plan how we can actually avoid them. Often, this is just about having to reflect on your own desires. You have to be rethinking the way you act, for example, with others. And maybe you're going to have to be looking at whether you get angry, for example, at people that you are kind of like infatuated by, or how do they upset you, or how you upset them as well. So there is definitely a need here to work out what makes you angry. And also, Leo can represent giving birth to a project as well. So maybe you're going to have to be stepping back a little bit and then having a look at the project, whether it is at its bestest. Also, this is definitely about confidence level as well. What makes you feel confident? This would be extremely important that you start working on that, because this Mars in Leo would necessarily talk to you about, yeah, going out and then chatting up girls and so forth. But if you don't tend to do that, then why am I not doing that? And that's going to be originated from somewhere. And because the planet of confidence on one hand is typically about the sun, you might want to be looking at where sun is, for example, in your chart. The other planet that could be representation of confidence is actually something to do with Jupiter also. But anyway, let's not necessarily go into that right now. Let's just kind of cover what this is going to be actually representing for you. Now, I know that Mars is going to be starting the journey on, by the way, 6 degree of Leo. So you might want to be looking at if you have got any planet, especially on 6 degree or 17 degree of Cancer, because then this retrogression is going to be impacting you quite significantly. It's going to be actually extremely important for you. Now, you might be having certain type of planets in between, and those could be also important though. But my kind of uh, um, experience is that when you have that planet specifically on those degrees, now those become extremely, extremely important. Now, one of the most important aspects that Mars is actually making it an opposition to Pluto. And we already had one between them two on 29 degree of Capricorn to 29 degree of Cancer. And then we're going to have two more. One of them is in January, actually. The other one is going to be later on in April. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. But before we do that, Mars having moved into the sign of Leo, you know, on one hand, it's definitely good because Mars moved out of a fall position, which is kind of like a psychological prison. Mars did not necessarily feel in the greatest possible shape in the sign of Cancer. And this, I usually describe this energy is like the soldier is chasing a chicken in the kitchen. So that's going to be a frustration for Mars. And Mars, it's really much about taking the heat in the sign of Leo. Let it come, I'm going to be brave and I'm going to be fighting against that. So definitely there is a happier type of energy coming with this. It is all about channeling certain type of vital energy and then putting that into a creative project. And as I said, you could be doing the sport, or maybe you could be just going to the park with the children, and you're going to feel like that you can be running around with them without much effort. Because Mars has got planetary joy in the sixth house, there is always a little bit of a danger coming with Mars. So it could create accidents, for example, as well. So you're gonna have to be watching out for those because you can feel like a teenager while Mars is in the sign of Leo. Mars is an activator. It's an inspiration. It's also an agitating force as well. So in Leo, this is all about I want to be seen, I want to be heard, I want to be paid attention to, I want to get that applause. And when I do not get that, I might go actually overboard with that because somehow someone is having to give me all that positive admiration, attention, and I need someone who is going to be praising me. So, in order for me to get that attention, what am I going to do? I'm going to be taking risks and I'm going to be doing something that is extremely noticeable for others. Also, Mars in Leo comes with a lot of bravery. It's kind of like because Leo is the sign of loyalty as well on one hand. So it's kind of like you are the loyal soldier who would be crossing fire without any type of question. I would be walking the fire for you if you wanted me to. I do not care what type of dangerous situation I walk into, because often it comes with overconfidence. So I'm just going to walk that fire without any type of hesitation. So I would say that these are some of the topics that you're going to have to be actually thinking about, and you're going to have to put that into your own natal chart. You're going to have to look at where Mars comes from the natal chart. So, for example, Mars is going through in my sixth house, but Mars natally is in my first. So, surely I'm going to be having to reassess something to do with my health and the body. Do I treat my body like in a healthy way and so forth. And this is telling me not to take unnecessary risks when it comes to sport activities and so forth, because it might lead to a kind of accident, for example. So this is one of the ways how actually you can try to read your chart. Now, I'd like to mention because Mars moved into the sign of Leo. Exactly on the very same day, Sun was in trine to Saturn as well. So it's always a good thing to do that you look at what the dispositor is actually doing. And even though it looks like that this aspect might be lasting for what, maximum 3, 4 days, really. But now this is going to be lasting for a lot longer period because until Mars is in the sign of Leo, it's just going to feel like that Sun and Saturn trine is also at the background. And this aspect is talking to you about being mature. It's about using your wisdom and also in a way to kind of obviously Saturn is the planet of slowliness. So you're gonna have to be putting a break onto how much you would like to be seen and heard and so forth because the sun represents something to do with your confidence, but also yourself, your identity as well. So, on one hand, this could talk to you about that you're going to have to become an authority figure. Also, you're going to have the boundaries. You're going to sometimes having to follow the rules. You're going to have to say no to things as well. And you're going to have to gain a little bit more wisdom too. So while Mars is trying to fire you up, this Sun and Saturn trine is actually prompting that, you know what, be smart. You don't need to run the marathon without any type of proper training, and listen to the advice and the guidance that I'm kind of trying to give you. This is the conversation Sun and Saturn archetype are talking to us about. Yes, maybe it also, while Mars is in the sign of Leo, but we have got this Sun and Saturn trine going on one hand, Sun and Saturn is the aspect of aging, while Mars in the sign of Leo feels like, a youngster, a kind of like a child's type of things. So maybe what we need to be seeing is that we are not as young anymore as we kind of thought before. And I feel like this is also something that is actually really, really kind of like important to remember. So this is a couple of things that I think it's highly exciting for us. On top of that, we had the Mars and Pluto opposition that happened on 29 degree of Capricorn and Capricorn and Cancer. Now, we also need to be remembering that the last two opposition between those two are going to be happening in the sign of Leo to in the sign of Aquarius. So that's going to be a little bit of a different feeling to it. And while one happened on 29 degree of the very last signs, the upcoming ones are going to be happening on 0 degree. So it could indicate that something that I left behind, and then I'm kind of like starting something new. And unfortunately, that kind of like new something like a new kingdom, a new political activism, for example, or I'm trying to kind of come up with certain type of new movements and so forth are unfortunately having to be reviewed in a way, or having to be, or it's not going to be as supported by others. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. I just want to make sure that we really understand this Sun and Saturn archetype, because I feel like this is going to be the key here. And also because this happened on 12 degree of Pisces to 12 degree of Scorpio, in case I forgot to mention that. This is also about commitment to kind of dive deep what is going on behind the surface. Scorpio is about intensity. So it feels like that to be intense, I have to be able to follow rules. Or someone is telling me that I shouldn't be that intense somehow. And also it is about how responsible I am when it comes to secrets, or taking extreme measures as well when it comes to, for example, a political decision and so forth, or a work situation. So surely we are extremely motivated here to figure out some of the path that we need to be on. This is telling us there is a lot of work to be done, and you know what? Mars in Leo thinks that we can get things done really quickly in 2, 3 days. And the Saturn's Sun trine is actually telling us that don't push it too much, because it might become overwhelming. And there are a lot of secrets, there are a lot of dark things that we have to be dealing with first. So it is telling you to give yourself time to create certain type of structures, and looking at how obsessed we are, for example, and looking for opportunities that might be coming up for you. Also, this is telling you to focus, to create certain type of constructive feedbacks and criticisms to others and to yourself as well. And also, this is telling you that sometimes your ego needs to be managed. Certain type of limits needs to be put on, and that's going to be making you more powerful. So definitely there is a little bit of an independence coming with this also. It could be making someone isolated. And it's kind of like the soul searching, really. It's really about finding the depth in something. And usually we might do that alone or not necessarily in groups, right? So that's just something I feel like it was important to mention for everyone. Now, going back to this Mars and Pluto kind of topics. So let's talk about that a little bit because I also find it extremely interesting that we have got Mars shifting into the sign of Leo. Juno entered Scorpio as well on the very same day. But let's focus first on this Mars Pluto opposition. So, this is a tough one. I mean, we've got the action, which is really kind of a conscious action. We know what we want to achieve. And then we've got Pluto, which is also talking to us about our urges, but that's more to do with the subconscious urges. So we've got a tension happening between these two. And it looks like we want to be building something, we want to be something new coming up. But we keep running into challenges that makes me angry, even violent, or it can make you extremely passionate about something. There is this all or nothing type of feel to this aspect. And because opposition often comes with projection, we're trying to push our, kind of like power onto others. For example, in political world, it could really talk to us about corruption that is going to be exposed, or we're going to be picking a really bad person and then, like we're going to be pointing at a really bad person, and then everyone is going to be picking on that type of person. And maybe that person is trying to manipulate the situation or becoming somehow destructive. However, there is definitely on the 29 degree, it was talking to us about a sense of let's get things done really quickly. And then Mars moves into the sign of Leo. We feel like that we have done a really great job. And then we're going to have two more oppositions. And actually, it turns out that it didn't go as well as we expected. Right. So we're going to have to come back and then kind of like take things apart and then having to put them back together. Let me tell you that there is really good stuff going on with this as well. It can give a tremendous amount of power. It can make someone really focused to be in the right direction in their lives, to actually experience certain type of great breakthroughs. It could transform you, especially in the sign of Leo, on a physical level so much that because you've got this push and desire to get things sorted about your body. And also, I mean, unfortunately, the other negative side is an attack against a politician, a celebrity, and so forth. So this is a brave kind of like prediction that I'm going to be making, that I think a politician is going to be most likely having a terror attack against them. And let me just mention that I think it's going to be one of the US. I mean, it's going to be Trump. Let me just kind of, and this is going to be happening either between January to April, pretty much, unfortunately. Now, going back to some of the other meanings of this archetype, that there is this pretty much of uh, because the retrograde is going to be indication that we have got an urge and then we have to put kind of like a pose onto it. So, of course, that is inside is going to be really much, kind of like eating you up in a way. But also, Mars in the sign of Leo could talk to you about celebrating of who I am. It could actually increase your performance level. It can make you a little bit more playful as well. But it really looks like that something is going to be exposed here, how much you party, for example. And maybe someone is going to be questioning that. Also, Mars in Leo often acts out of pride and egotistical questions. So, while Moon is also the planet of reaction, but there's more to do with an emotional reaction. Mars would be more about the physical reaction, and Mars is obviously going to be shooting someone in the head. So some like a politician, a star, and so forth, a celebrity, a king, a queen, or certain type of leaders, especially world leaders with Leo, say something out loud, and someone is not going to like that. So let me attack them, type of meaning. Because this aspect is all about courage to stand up, and I want to show the world, what I'm made of. And that's the type of kind of like the performer there as well. And often it's all about, attention seeking. So you have to see me. Now, as I said, very interesting that on the day when Mars moves into the sign of Leo, Sun is making that trine to Saturn, but Juno enters the sign of Scorpio as well. And Juno therefore is disposed by Mars from a traditional point of view. So on one hand, Juno is about agreements. It looks like that a kind of like an underlying agreement is happening somewhere here. It's kind of like entering a new type of partnership, quite a demanding partnership that maybe I'm not going to be sharing that with everyone. This is type of like this is kind of like a contractual agreement. Often it's actually based on mutual respect, actually, but or a mutual agenda. And we are not necessarily hiding things from each other, but we are hiding something here from the world. And it looks to me that that's going to be exposed. This is an agreement that doesn't come just from one day to another, really. We are talking about some really extreme commitment here, like a commitment that is signed for, I don't know, 10 years and so forth. Often this is coming with blackmails. Now, Juno will be in the sign of Scorpio until 19th of February, and we'll be stationing the retrograde on 19th of March, and it's going to come back into the sign of Scorpio on 15th of April. And Juno will be leaving Scorpio on the 1st of October. Now, I did make a longer video about this. Okay, so if you are curious about that, then you might want to be checking out on my YouTube channel because I think it's a good half an hour video, and I speak about this a lot more in length. And of course, because Juno is going to be spending quite a lot of time, in the sign of Scorpio, therefore it's going to be really, really important. So, guys, I think I mentioned pretty much everything that I wanted to share for today. So please let me know how you think Mars in Leo will be playing out in the world, because I'm really curious to see. Also, do let me know in the chat box where your Mars is, what house it is in, for example. Always remember that, for example, because my Mars is in the first house and it's going to be 6 sign away from the first. So you always want to be counting how many signs away it is and integrate that into your reading as well. When you do it that for yourself or when you do it even for others too. That could be highly important to do. You will see that your readings are going to become a lot more accurate. So, guys, thank you for your attention, and I hope to see you very soon. Take care. Bye bye.